This is casually hardcore.
Taste the game closing. Game news.
And casually hardcore.
Press start.
Thanks you all for joining us here. We are here joined by Playtonic, who are working on Yooka-Laylee. That's a good start, isn't it? They're working on Yooka-Laylee, the hugely anticipated game, super successful on Kickstarter. Obviously, you know them from their work at Rare, and today, for the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to go through some of their games from Rare and what it's like working with Nintendo, basically. Before we start, though, let's get to meet the team. Just go and introduce yourselves and let us know what you worked on at Rare.
Hello everyone. Is this working? Hello?
That is working. I'll just speak up a little bit.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Yeah, okay. My name is Chris Sutherland. I was lead programmer on games such as Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, and also on Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie. So that's the stuff I'm probably most well known for. Steve Mills.
My name's Steve Mills. I started Rare in 1992. I did characters animation for Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2, Banjo-Kazooie 1 and 2, and a load of other stuff which probably isn't as important as those games.
Hello, can you hear us, yeah? My name's Kevin Bayliss, began at Rare in 1987, and I've worked on a couple of games, Battletoads, Killer Instinct, Donkey Kong Country, and a lot of old NES titles and Super NES titles. So.
Hello, my name's David Wise. I've worked on Donkey Kong Country, Battletoads and a few other games as well, so one or two.
Just a modest CV there. It's amazing because obviously your history of Nintendo, you obviously had a period in the 90s with them. But before then you also worked on Battletoads, which was obviously a Nintendo game as well. What was your relationship like with Nintendo in the 80s, I guess, when you were working on NES games? And how was that? Got a mic this side. Yeah.
I think at the time, during the time of Battletoads, I think we'd put together a few demos of different character games, fighting games, this and that and the other. And I think the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game was out at the time. And we were looking to get something that we could get a lot of merchandise together with, and so we came up with a Battletoads concept, added up the different appendages and stuff like that, and so it sort of went on from there. But I think at the time we got a great relationship with Nintendo, and it sort of grew from that time on, I think so.
And you're always quite big fans of Nintendo as well, I believe, weren't you, before kind of the relationship started? You're always quite big fans of Nintendo, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we always played the games when they came out. When the Super Mario games came out, I used to sit there in the barns and at Rare in the Manor Farmhouse, and we used to just sit and play through all the games that were coming out. Usually the Japanese ones. So I remember playing Link to the Past and then getting stuck where I think you changed to the Dark World because it was in Japanese. I had no idea what was going on. I played right to that point, and then I just couldn't get any further because I think I didn't understand some fundamental thing you needed to do, which was always explained in text, probably continually telling me, and I just didn't know what to do. But that was kind of actually made it more exciting because right now, you see things on YouTube and you can see the playthroughs. It's just a click away. Whereas there, you had no information, you had nothing. You just had this cartridge, and you thought it was you against the cartridge. And as far as you were concerned, you were the only person in the world playing this game at that point, and that really made it a bit special. Yeah.
Kind of how did you remember how it started with Nintendo as well, when the relationship started in the mid-90s? How that came about?
The original relationship with Nintendo started on the very first game that Rare did. It was a game called Slalom.
Oh, really?
What Tim and Chris Stamford did, they reverse engineered the NES, the original Nintendo Entertainment System, and we presented it via our agent to the Nintendo in Japan. They were so impressed, and that's really what started the relationship.
I think you did the music for that.
And in the mid-90s when it started. I think it started with Genyo Takeda, I think, approached the stampers, and it's kind of a technological thing first of all. Do you remember how it started in the 90s as well? How you and Nintendo kind of met in the 90s and how that all came about?
I think if you're talking about how did the relationship grow with Nintendo, well, I think when I began working there was already quite a lot of sort of good standing in place with Nintendo, with Tim and Chris had obviously put together, and a couple of the guys that had been working on the software, sort of some of the NES conversions for some of the game shows, it just sort of strengthened that whole relationship. And when we got to the point where we started experimenting with silicon graphics machines to produce, I think we were doing a couple of demos of a fighting game which eventually became Killer Instinct. I think Nintendo were actually looking for a game to sort of compete with Aladdin, which was Sega's sort of challenge they got at the time, and they were boasting the animation that they got from the Disney animators. They took one look at the demo that we got with the silicon graphics machines, and they said we'd like some of that, so what do you need to put this thing together? And so the next thing we knew, we'd got about 30 silicon graphics machines coming into the company, and it was all supplied by Nintendo. It was great. So.
What was making games like back then? I imagine it's very different to what it is now.
It is quite different to what it is now. Today, a lot of companies, a lot of the larger companies, you're part of a giant team, and because of that, there has to be so much planning up front. There has to be a lot of work on design, and you have that all documented up front. But back then, there was far less of that. You might get, for the entire game, the design might be on a paragraph of paper, or might not even be on paper. It might be just something that somebody wrote down, and it's passed down by word of mouth. So back then, it was very much more fluid, very kind of ad hoc, and you just bounce ideas off each other as you went along. So it was a kind of an idea, I got this great idea, shall we do this? You try something out, see if it works, and then you iterate on that. I mean, you're seeing a lot of that nowadays with some of the indie games, because those are small teams, so that's really that same kind of feel. I think perhaps why you see many of the indie games are very, very innovative in the kind of the ideas and the visuals that they have. They're very kind of strike you, so this is quite a bit different, and I think that's why.
Moving on to the first game you kind of made with your for the partnership with Nintendo, Donkey Kong Country. Do you remember how that came about? How you came to be working on Donkey Kong Country?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the fighting demo again, Kev. So was that before the Donkey Kong stuff came about, or was it at the same time? Yeah, so Nintendo saw this demo of the silicon graphics models, and they were just blown away by that. And they gave us the resources, and they gave us, I believe they gave us a Nintendo IP of choice, and we chose to resurrect Donkey Kong. That's the way.
I think they wanted to give us a character which they got some kind of familiarity out there that it wouldn't be too damaging if it went the wrong way. And so they took Donkey Kong, and I think Shigeru Miyamoto's original design, it was still exactly as it was when it was sitting at the top of the girders with Mario coming up at the bottom. And so they gave us that character to play with, and said make it into a platform game character and do what you can with it. So fortunately, where we're actually based, we're only about 5 or 6 miles away from quite a famous zoo called Twycross Zoo. And so we could take lots of trips up to the zoo to go and study all of the gorillas and the apes. And we built a quick model based on the designs that we'd sort of rejigged. And we were just sort of playing with the animation, really. I think Tim put together some jungle background, and we were all sort of playing with the silicon graphics machines. And we put a demo together. and a lot of that content from the demo was used as a sort of template to produce the rest of the graphics for the game. And then a team of, say, I think was about 25, 30 people on the team?
No, it's about half that.
So about 10, 15 people.
Because I think we ended up doing so much overtime. The team probably should have been twice as big, but for a year, a few of us worked. We'd work 5 hours of overtime. We'd work till midnight every night. We could see what a great product this was going to be. I mean, even from the early days of the demo, we just had Donkey Kong walking along. We're thinking, holy shit, this is like so much better than anything anybody's ever seen. I mean, Kev mentions Aladdin and the Disney animators. Well, it almost felt like cheating with the 3D stuff because we weren't the best animators in the world, but we could create this stuff which was like, 5 times better than anything like any trained up Disney animator could create, like for the consoles at the time. So it was just amazing, it really was.
I think that was a bit of a turning point for the company too, because up until that time we'd all been using very much, sometimes they'd even work on did graphics for maybe 2 or 3 games at once. If we have an NES game, there may be one guy doing the software and another guy doing the graphics, but that guy might also be doing graphics for 2 or 3 other games. And then we went to the Super NES, and you'd have a team of maybe 2 people, maybe an additional artist to do some extra props. But as soon as we got sort of serious with Donkey Kong, that's when the team started to become sort of commonplace. And so we had a team, we had separate blocks. We'd have a block with a team of about 15 people working on Donkey Kong, a team of people working on Killer Instinct, a team of people working on a Game Boy project, and so that the whole nature in the way that we put games together, it sort of grew into this, it sort of went haywire really. The company got much bigger and we had a demand for more artists and more software engineers and of course more musicians. So there was a real changing point when we got to that pseudo 3D stage.
I remember it looking absolutely amazing as well when it came out. I couldn't believe you had this on the SNES basically. I'm sure a lot of people remember when they first saw Donkey Kong Country. It was like a mind-blowing experience. Was it really hard to get the SNES to do that? Because it seemed like it was almost beyond the capabilities of the machine.
It wasn't. The graphics sort of took care of themselves. As soon as the 3D rendering was in place, I can remember speaking to a guy in a pub and he found out that we were doing this stuff and he said, how are you going to get 6 million colours down into 16 colours and this big and look good on a screen? And we said, well, we've done it. And we'd written a routine to get the colours down to your eye can only detect so many colours anyway when it's at this size. As long as the thing was moving, it looked like a 3D character, and I think it just blew people away when they saw that. We surprised ourselves, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the case. When we started out, we thought, well, this is the challenge to squeeze all that information, that visual information from the silicon graphics image down into 16 colours. And a lot of people, including myself, were saying, this is impossible, it's never going to work. But I think that kind of shows the attitude we had at the time, which was, well, we'll try it anyway and see. And so we gave it a go, and we were, Kevin says, we were impressed by the results. We weren't expecting it to look that good, and we were kind of thinking, wow, this looks good. And then the next challenge was getting just all those graphics to fit in the limited memory of the console, because for each level you'd have a limited amount of video RAM, and so again, squeezing all those images down meant you had to create little tiles of them and replicate them. So effectively similar to what you have in any of the Mario titles, but it's kind of, they're more blended together, so it looks like one uniform image. And again, that took some time. Greg Mills sat there with one image that was on one screen, and he spent a week on it, and eventually got it to a stage where he could use those tiles to build an entire level out of just all the tiles that are on one screen. So it was a kind of case of we just kept hammering at it, because we knew that the potential for what we would get in the end was going to be so great. We just thought there must be a way to do this, there must be a way to do it, and we just kept going.
Was it 1080p and 60 frames per second though? That's the important thing.
It wasn't. That was before the HD era.
Oh no. If it had enough colours, that's all good. It must have been weird as well working on Donkey Kong, because that's obviously Miyamoto's creation. Did you have much input into it when you was making Donkey Kong?
The actual design of the graphics, the character, or the game itself. But a lot of the gameplay was put together by Greg Mayles, wasn't it? A lot of the ideas for that.
Yeah, Nintendo were fairly hands-off in terms of the development. There was a point towards the end when they were reviewing it, and Miyamoto suggested the hand slap maneuver, that was kind of added quite late on, which is probably why it wasn't utilised so much throughout the game. But that was like idea of you can slap the ground and you can find things. So it's kind of give it a replay value or a reason to try and explore other areas. So that was the thinking behind that. But for the most part, we were left to our own devices, really. It was kind of a case of off you go, see what you can do.
Did they never really have much input then? Did they come into the office studio that much, or did they kind of really just let you make your games and then they kind of nodded approval? There was
a few visits they had, but I guess from our perspective as developers on the team, we were often shielded on that because they would be talking to Tim and Chris.
Yeah.
And similarly, in Nintendo America, we'd be talking to Tim, and they'd review a lot. If there were any suggestions, they'd review them and they'd kind of filter them and think, well, is that going to work for this title? So they'd have that discussion. So a lot of the things that we probably didn't, if there were suggestions, we didn't see them. But from what I remember, there wasn't a vast amount of suggestions.
There's a famous thing about Miyamoto flipping a table. I think it's a figure of speech, but I always wondered if developers, there is an actual table in your studio which he comes in and then can come and flip it at any point.
Oh, to upend the table so that everything has to change. Yeah, we didn't see that. I mean, I suppose the closest might have been the hand slap, but that was kind of something that was easy to add in because it was a case of we could just add that at any time. I don't know, can you remember?
I mean, from my point of view, it was a really plain sailing, smooth project to work on. I mean, we only had a year to do it, so there really wasn't time to redo stuff anyway. So what got put in was used, and it was right first time. So it was all good.
Make it sound easy almost.
Well, I mean, it's what, 20 odd years ago, so maybe that's rose tinted glasses, but it was pretty easy. Yeah.
The music's such an important part of Donkey Kong Country as well, and I wondered if you could just tell us about how you came about, how you worked on the soundtrack for Donkey Kong.
It was basically taking it down to its very finest, smallest components and putting it back together again. We didn't use MIDI, we just typed it in code, just so we got more memory, and just slaved away through it for a whole year, just to get the soundtrack to be as good as possible. It was in the same way we did the graphics, we did pretty much the same with the music as well.
Obviously, after Donkey Kong Country, you moved on to the N64. How did that kind of change the way you worked in development?
So it was interesting moving from the SNES with the level of graphics that we produced on Donkey Kong Country onto N64 because the theory was always going to be, this is a more powerful machine. It was going to be able to do all those things that we've done in 2D that look like 3D but are really in 2D, and actually do them rendered in 3D. But what we actually found was the power of the machine wasn't fast enough as what we wanted to be able to do, because the expectation was to see something in 3D of the quality that we've been producing on Donkey Kong Country. And it wasn't actually going to be possible, so we were kind of faced with a quandary of how are we going to do this? How are we going to get past this leap? Are we going to actually produce something that's going to be lesser in terms of quality? So I think what we started to do first of all with when we did Project Dream was we tried to use the same technology we've done, the kind of ACM, advanced computer modeling technology we had in Donkey Kong Country, and we tried to take that out and use that on the N64. And you had a lot of flat tiles, a lot of flowers and trees and graphics that were all flat, but they looked great. But then we found that if you rotated the camera and you looked around from different angles, it just didn't hold together as an image. And so eventually we changed over and we went to a 3D world, which is kind of less polygons than what you can get on, say, the pre-rendered images, but it meant that it had that 3D feel, and that's kind of where we ended up with Boundary.
I think from a graphics point of view, when we first got hold of the N64, we didn't really know what to do with the hardware. We got that used to using the Super NES and trying to make use of the Mode 7 and rotating the screen, something that everybody always tried to do with the Super NES. And we knew where we were with sprites, but as soon as we went all 3D, we were faced with all these triangles and this very low texture resolution, a small texture cache. We didn't quite know what to do with it, and then we saw Mario 64, and it kind of showed us what could be done with that. And I think I just come from working on Killer Instinct at the time, and so I could have as many polygons and as many curves on everything because it was just pre-rendered, to go into something that looked very crude. But as soon as you, I think you embrace the hardware, you sort of adopted a style that worked with it, as it did with Mario 64, and then you saw games like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie coming from that, and it was a fun game to play, and it looked great, and it had a style of its own, just as I think DKC series also had a style, which at the era, I think, looking at some of the games over there on the retro area, they don't look out of place when you look at them on that small TV screen, but looking at them today, they look very crude, but I think they had their own style, and so we just made the most of it.
Yeah, it was quite a learning curve, like moving from the NURBS. That was the method we used to model for the pre-rendered sprites for Donkey Kong was NURBS. Moving from that to the polygons for the N64. I mean, me personally, I had no idea what this was about. I didn't know what a normal was, what a vertex was, any of that. So that was all new stuff to learn. And then another limit, I think the maximum texture size was like a 32 by 32. So the way to get around that, we'd render a larger texture, and then we cut it up into 32 by 32s and overlap them slightly, and that's how we got around. Because the first batch of N64 games, the textures were very low res, very muddy, and I think we got around that really nicely with Banjo by using this other method.
Yeah. It feels like what you're doing with Yooka-Laylee is kind of a throwback as well in some ways to your Nintendo work. Do you think what you did with Nintendo has kind of helped with Yooka-Laylee?
Yeah, I think we kind of had a blueprint of how we were going to work that was set out for us back then, and we kind of knew that system worked, and we could also see maybe ways we could improve it as well. So we kind of took that, and then we just reused that blueprint, because we've gone from teams of 2 people, 2 or 3 people, up to teams of 100, 200 people. So we kind of seen that whole spectrum of development and how it proceeded, what worked, what didn't work, and so we used that experience to really develop the team that we have for Yooka-Laylee.
The floor to questions in a second. Before I do that though, you were telling me beforehand about how when you met someone from Nintendo.
Yes, so there's this story which Steve denies happened, but I saw it with my own eyes. So we were in Japan at a games conference, and there was before the games conference there was an evening party that was a Nintendo party, and we were kind of milling around and kind of talking to other Nintendo developers as you do, and there was a developer who handed us our business cards. We were exchanging business cards, and the culture in Japan for business cards exchange is very much it's a very significant thing. Somebody's giving you their business card, so they'll present it with both hands, and then you take the card, and then you place that in a safe place, because it's effectively they're giving you a part of themselves. So it's a very important and a respected thing, and I think people had a few drinks maybe, and Steve took the card that he got from one of the Nintendo developers, and then he realized that the card that he had was like a non-standard size. It was actually too large to fit in his wallet. So he then decided that he would actually tear the edges off the card in order to fit it into his wallet. So we kind of had to say, don't do that in front of anybody else, because it's just not going to go down very well. Steve denies that happened, but it did.
Sorry for that. Well, we've got time for some questions from the audience. If we have someone with a microphone. We've got someone just about to head out with a microphone. So if you've got any questions, raise your hand. We've got one already over here. We'll get to you in a second. Just the one over here.
So
game started off with 2 or 3 people making arcade games in their basements, and then it's sort of evolved so much that you have teams of about 500 people now. Do you think you'll ever go back to being 2 or 3 people making games on their computers again?
So I think the question is, do we think with people who've gone from a small number in the basement to making to 500 people, do we think we'll ever go back to 2 or 3 people making games? I think that definitely is the case, and we're seeing that now. I mean, a few years ago, if you tried to make a game with a small number of people, even 10, 15, it was a challenge because you had to build the engine first. Nowadays, you've got things like Unreal, Unity, and small teams can do that. And I think you're going to see over the coming years, those engines are just going to increase in the ability they have. You're going to see kind of amazing things that you're going to be able to do just by flicking a switch, pressing a button. And so I think it's just going to get easier and easier for anybody to just build their own game. Obviously something like Super Mario Maker as an example, obviously that's just one game, but that kind of thing is just going to get better and better. So I expect to see more of that, and I think that's a good thing because it means, like I said earlier, we're going to get more and more innovation. The ideas we're going to get are better, and I think that helps everybody in the industry really.
Ukulele? I should probably know that, but what are you using for ukulele?
So for ukulele we're using Unity, Unity 3D.
Any more questions? I think there's one at the back. Oh, there's a few more, so it's just swap questions. So.
How are things coming along with ukulele? And were you surprised with how it's supported received from your Kickstarter? Or did you secretly know that people still wanted this kind of game?
So the question is, how are things coming along with ukulele, and were we surprised at the amount of support we were seeing? Things are coming along very well with ukulele. I believe Andy Robinson's going to be posting an update to our Kickstarter very soon with some more information about how things are going. And also, in terms of what the response we received, we were kind of blown away, because I remember when we launched the Kickstarter, we had no idea whether anyone would actually back us at all. People were saying, oh yeah, you'll get some backers, but we had no idea how many. So I remember sitting there, Andy launched the Kickstarter, and he sent me the link because you don't get the actual link to the Kickstarter until you publish it. I pasted it into Internet Explorer, opened the page, and then I was expecting obviously to see just 0 figure, but then the figure was already not, I never saw the figure at 0. I was within seconds of the Kickstarter going live, there was money just pouring in, and we were just staring at the screen. We were supposed to be doing other things like posting on social media about the event, but we were just kind of so caught up in this number that just kept going up. And really, it was just quite overwhelming actually. I think you'd agree?
Absolutely, yeah. It was one of those things we'll never forget, really. And I mean, we keep thanking everybody, but we do really thank all our backers for making Yooka-Laylee as good as it's going to be. And the game is looking fantastic. The first level is well on its way to being completed now. It looks completely different in a really positive way to what you've already seen. So it's all going brilliant.
Actually, is there anyone here who backed us on the Kickstarter? Wow. Thank you all very much. For those that didn't raise your hand, thank you, but slightly less. Thanks.
Any more questions? There's one at the back who's very keen.
Am I on? How's it going, guys? Big fan of the early rest of Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct and all the rest. With games like Yooka-Laylee and things like Grow Home, do you think there's much of a market for that older generation 3D adventure platforming style games in today's market?
So I think the question was, do I think there's still a market for those kind of games, the 3D platforming games? I think there is. Well, I guess I'd say there is, because that's kind of evidenced by the success of the Kickstarter. But I think there is, because it's almost like there's been a gap in the market where people haven't been making those games for whatever reason. Perhaps because one reason might be because as we've seen consoles, newer consoles come out, there's been a tendency for people to head towards realism and kind of try and show off what the console can do in that respect. But and maybe as a result of that, they bypassed the kind of more cartoony visuals that we've been more well known for. So I think there seemed to be just an opportunity for us to go back and build that kind of style, that kind of look, and it sits from what, like I say, from the Kickstarter response so far, it seems to be very positive. So yes, I do think there is a market for that. But I guess the proof of the pudding will be October next year, and we'll see.
I got one question.
Hi there. I apologise if none of you worked on this directly. It seems to be around the same time period. So when Conker was first shown off the Nintendo 64, it was a very different game to when it finally came out. Can you talk a bit about why it changed? Obviously it was much more like Banjo-Kazooie, sort of a childish sort of friendly world, and then it became a very sort of different game. What sort of happened in Rare in the sort of the 6 months to a year where it changed so much?
So the question is why, when Conker was first announced and it was shown at E3 or CES as it was then, it was 12 Tales, and it was quite a different game from what was actually eventually released. It was a very cutesy kind of platformer game, and the question is why did that change, or why did it go to being the game it eventually was released as? And the answer was really, I suppose, a byproduct of the way Rare worked then, where you had each team was very separate. It worked in its own barn, and they had little influence on each other. And often we didn't even know what another team was working on in another barn. So the Conker team started off on working on this kind of cute platformer, and then at the same time we'd switched from Project Dream to building Banjo, and actually interestingly, one of the reasons we switched to our 3D styles because we saw what the Conker team were doing, and we were shown that, and it was clear that they had a great route, and the visuals they were getting were really good. So we said, let's go that route as well. But we progressed with Banjo, and it got to a certain point where that was basically being chosen as the game that was going to be shown, and the next game that we were going to release, and then it kind of meant that we were going to end up with two games which were really the same kind of style. So to kind of avoid that, I think it was looked like, see what other things can be done with Conker. And I think that was then Chris Seaver had some great ideas, and he was brought on board, and his style, his personal way of thinking about things is really what influenced Conker to be the thing it was. And that, I think, was for the benefit of both games, because if they both came out and they were both very similar, then it would have really kind of just detracted from each other. It was a weak in both of them, so I think in the end it was a best result.
There's one just behind you, actually.
Given the success of the Yooka-Laylee Kickstarter, do you think you'll stick with that model of development in the future for crowdfunding, or do you think you'll go back to the old model that you used in the past?
So the question is, given the success of the Yooka-Laylee Kickstarter, do you think we'll carry on with that model of funding game development, or go back to an older model? The answer is I don't know right now, because the whole what happens with crowdfunding is changing, on a daily basis, and you'll see, in a year's time, it may be a completely different landscape. So I don't know exactly what the model will be in a year's time. We'll kind of probably a case of wait and see. But it certainly could be a case. It's worked for some games, certainly. Other games, less so, maybe. I don't think there's anything concrete planned at the moment.
Just been waiting for a while over there over the corner. Yeah, just over there.
Guys, I told you I'd ask you a difficult question. What was it like working with Tim and Chris Stamper?
So that question comes from the two guys who are from Fortune Fish, who are actually working with Tim at the moment. So I can only say it was great. It was. But I'm going to pass this one on to the other guys because they've not really had the chance to answer these questions. So they're going to answer you. And thanks for the difficult question. I promised it was going to be difficult.
it's not too difficult. I worked with Tim full time on Donkey Kong Country, and he was just a complete inspiration every day. You know, he'd lead from the front, he'd do just as much overtime as the rest of us. Yeah, it was just a really great experience.
I met Tim when I was very, very young. I was only 16, just turned 16 actually, and I just walked into this room and he started to show me all of the Ultimate Play the Game artwork, and I was just blown away by that. And he sort of took me under his wing really, and I think the graphics department was basically Tim and myself and his dog. And no, it was amazing. It's come from school to go to something that was just something that you dreamt of doing. Whilst I was sitting in my brother's room playing on his ZX Spectrum, I was sitting there in the room with the guy who'd done all of the graphics to these fantastic games, and it was such a help, and it was great guidance. And I actually say he felt a little bit like my brother for the time. So, and yeah, it was a great time working with him. So.
And obviously it's been very good. We wouldn't be sitting up here now if it wasn't for Tim and Chris. And to go with what Kevin said, they took us under their wing. Strong leadership, and it's the sort of leadership that's sadly lacking in a lot of video game companies at the moment. So yeah, big one for Tim and Chris there.
Thank you very much. We've got one down the front. Just the second row. Oh, yeah, just it.
Given the volume of new indie games coming out all the time, have you got any advice to new developers how they can make their games stand out at all?
So the question is, given the volume of indie games coming out now, what advice is there for indie developers to make their games stand out? I think the answer is kind of in the question you posed, which is it has to stand out in some way to be able to be different. So it has to be, if you're going to build something that's the same as like a MOBA that's just very similar to something else that's out there that's a big name, then you're probably not going to, it's not going to be seen from the rest of the crowd. So it has to be something, whether it's in the idea of the gameplay or the visual style, or if you look at something like Cuphead, that's got an amazing visual style, and it kind of draws you in. It makes you think, oh, I want to find out some more. You just watch the video of that and you think, I need to be able to play this game to find out what it's like. And I think you need something like that to be able to hook people in. And so, like I say, it could be gameplay, it could be visuals, it could be audio, something unique that's going to stand out. I guess it's finding that. Now, how you find that, that's a $1 million question, isn't it? It's probably a case of just bouncing ideas off, looking at what else is out there, seeing if there's things that maybe something that somebody has brought out that works, but you think, we can do a twist on that, we can make it a bit different and a bit unique, we can give it something that's really fresh and new.
Thanks, I think we've got time for another couple of questions, so there's one just...
Hi, I just have a particular question for Dave. You've made quite accomplished soundtracks that people really like, so the Donkey Kong Country series, for instance. Everyone seems to really love Donkey Kong Country 2, which I do as well, on the soundtrack. But is that necessarily your favourite soundtrack that you've made for a game? So I'm just wondering, what's your favourite soundtrack that you've made for a game? And in particular, what tune?
Obviously DKC2 was one of my favourite soundtracks to work on, but some of the earlier ones I really liked as well. I really like the score for Battletoads Arcade, which I believe is over on the Rare Replay stand at the moment. Another one I really enjoyed was the Tropical Freeze, because it was nice to return to the fold really and carry on with the license. So yeah, definitely those, but there's been so many, and I can't say I don't enjoy making them, so they're all good. That was, from a developing point of view, I really enjoy it.
One just over there.
What's it like working with Grant Kirkhope again after so long?
Grant's a real character. He's really good fun to work with. So I'm really enjoying the experience, and yeah, it's good. It's good to be back with the old team again. So it certainly brings something to the table. It's great.
Yeah, I think that's also part of the advice I would give out to anybody else about. It's partially about the people that you're working with. I think one of the great things about Playtonic at the moment is that we all know how we work. We've worked together, and if you can put it together between yourselves and solve all of the issues, 9 times out of 10 you're going to get a fun game out of it. And say knowing who you're working with helps to sort of make the machine, doesn't it?
Okay, Grant, yeah, I mean we trade insults all the time, me and Grant. So he'll like email us a new tune, and even if it's really great, I'll say it's shit anyway, just to wind him up. But you know, that's how it goes. And then we'll be on Twitter trading insults as well. So yeah, we love Grant.
Any more questions at all? One down the front with the fastest to raise his hands later.
How does your team respond to a recently released collection of games on Xbox?
So the question is, how's our response to the recently released collection of games on Xbox? Well, I think it's a great thing, and I got a free copy, so I'm going to obviously say that. I'm on some of the videos for that. They recorded 5 hours of videos of me interviewing, so they used some segments, but most of that 5 hours was me trying to remember what happened 20 years ago. I think it's great because it gives you the opportunity to go back and play these games from the past, and often you just can't do that now because that hardware is not available, it's either broken or it's in your attic and you can't be bothered to get it out. But just be able to bring it back to a fresh audience. A lot of people have never played these games, and sometimes I think you go back and you probably have rose-tinted glasses and you go, this wasn't as good as I thought, but then you go to other games and you think, actually this was better than I expected it was, and then I remembered it was. So I think it's great to be able to go to do that, and I think it's great that they brought that collection out. It seems a fitting way to celebrate the 30 years of Rare. Myself, I'm still working through, played through Battletoads Arcade and Banjo on that, and Jet Force Gemini with the updated controls. I'm finding that easier to work through now, so I've still got quite a way to go. It feels like there's about, I don't know, like several years worth of gameplay in that one package, so I mean it's great value.
I keep looking in the post, but they haven't sent me a free copy yet. Chris has got one, but not me. I think Kev got one as well. I have to say, Grab by the Goalies looks fantastic, and if nobody's played that, it really is a great game. And the team that worked on that is the same team that did DK and Banjo, and it's, we've got as much love for that project as we have for the more well-known projects. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually got a copy of that too. So I've got 2 copies if you want them. I think I took a step out of games for about 10 years actually, and I've just sort of come back into it, and just at the right time really, because when Rare Replay came out, it was a great reminder of how much work that actually went into the games. And I can remember the day that this guy did this graphic or this guy did this sound effect, and so you look at it now and it's also a reminder of how much we managed to squeeze out of some of the tiny cartridges that the games are actually playing on. So also I don't have to buy all those games again now, so I've got a copy which I might be signing and putting on eBay later. So, but no, it's a nice reminder, and it's a nice little memento to keep, so I'm really proud to have been attached to them. So.
Yeah, it's the same sentiment really. I just need to buy an Xbox One to play it on, so that's what I'm waiting for.
I've got time for one more question. Over here.
So you talked a little bit more about Donkey Kong Country 1 and how it was based on a demo and silicon graphics, but then coming into Donkey Kong Country 2, I assume the expectations are a little bit different because of the performance of the first game, so I just wondering if you could talk briefly about the differences between developing the second game and the first game because of expectation and moving the main character from the first.
Yeah, no, I said the first game was straightforward. Well, it was after we got past, the learning curve of 3D, but the second one was even more straightforward because it was more of the same, really. So we introduced, was it controversial leaving DK out and introducing a new character? I don't know, it just seemed to be the right thing to do at the time. And we had like the whole pirate thing. Rare, especially Greg, have always loved pirates, so the pirates are always going to be there. It was just a great game to work on. And as Dave's saying, the soundtrack for DKC2 is my favourite game soundtrack of all time. I have to say that, so it was just great.
Thank you very much for coming, and please give a big round of applause to Playtonic.
Thank you very much. As a final plug, I know a bunch of you guys have got the Yooka-Laylee prints from Games Edition, so I think the guys are going to sort of hang around and do some signing here if you've actually got one that you'd like signed right now. If not, we'll be after that.
Did you enjoy that video? Then hit that like button. Why not subscribe as well and get the latest videos, news and competitions? Don't forget to check out casuallyhardcore.com, where you can buy hundreds of video game shirts and geek clothing, or make your own shirts with worldwide shipping also available. Until next time, stay casually hardcore.